The Marine Survey vessel looking for MH370 has been out on station for a week. It did a couple days worth of scanning, had to go on standby for a couple of days due to bad weather. Now it looks like it's deploying those deep scanning robot subs once again. Hi, everybody. Jeff Wise back with you. Today is Tuesday, January 6th, and I'm going to give you the latest on what's been happening in the Seabed search for the wreck of the missing Malaysian airliner MH370. And we happen to know what's been going on in unusual detail because the company doing the search, Ocean Infinity, has been surprisingly open lately. Stay tuned and I'll tell you all about it. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Finding MH370, the podcast where we dive deep into every aspect of the technical evidence to solve aviation's greatest mystery. Here's a picture of the search ship Armada 8605 at Fremantle, where it stopped to pick up fuel before proceeding to the search area. In a message to family members of the missing on New Year's Eve, Ocean Infinity reported the following in a statement. It said, quote, Armada 8605 has arrived at the search location at approximately 0400 hours on 31 December 2025. 2 Hugin AUVs were successfully deployed and are currently on mission surveying the southern sector of the search area. The search area covered today, 1,655 square kilometers. End quote. Parenthetically, I think that's a typo. I think what they meant to say is that that's the total area searched so far during the current renewed search, including what they scanned back in March. As previously described in earlier episodes of this podcast, what we were expecting to see was that the ship would continue along a strip outside the 7th arc, continuing work that a sister ship had begun back in March. And that's exactly what it seems to have done. On January 5th, the Facebook group MH370 Families posted an update from Ocean Infinity that read, quote, between 2 and 4 January 2026, search operations for MH370 continued aboard Armada 8605 in the southern sector of the 7th arc with sustained deployment of autonomous underwater vehicles despite intermittent technical and weather-related challenges. Then on 2nd of January, which was day 3, Mission 2 survey activities were concluded early in the morning, Mission 2 being what they're calling this phase. 2 Hugin AUVs were successfully redeployed and continued executing planned survey missions under active vessel monitoring. That means they've got a data link between the underwater robot sub and the surface vessel. It goes on. A 3rd Hugin AUV was launched, but experienced a technical fault shortly after deployment. Fault-finding procedures were completed by the AUV team, and the vehicle was declared ready for redeployment when operational conditions allow. Now, day 4, the 3rd of January, this message goes on to say, search operations progressed with 2 Hugin AUVs deployed and operating in accordance with mission plans. Vessel to AUV communications remained stable throughout routine system handshakes. Deployment of the 3rd AUV was deferred due to unfavorable sea conditions, with redeployment planned once conditions improve. Parenthetically, what they're saying is that if conditions are rough on the surface, it's no problem for the AUVs that have already been deployed. They're working down below. They can operate happily for 2 or 3 days, but they can't be deployed and it's hard to retrieve them. So they kept that 3rd broken or recently repaired AUV on board the ship. Okay, day 5, 4 January 2026. Both deployed Hugin AUVs successfully completed their assigned missions and were safely recovered on board Armada 8605. While all 3 AUVs were confirmed to be technically ready for subsequent missions, persistent adverse sea conditions throughout the day prevented any further launches. Search operations were therefore temporarily paused and remain weather dependent. I'm gathering from that it's easier for them to retrieve than to deploy when the weather's bad. That's a little surprising to me, actually, but that's what I'm inferring from the fact that they were able to retrieve but chose not to deploy. Okay. So obviously the work was proceeding at a suboptimal speed during this period because one of the AUVs, couldn't be deployed. the bad weather in the area forced them to go on a hiatus, basically. So based on marine tracking data provided by Kevin Rupp, 8605 spent a couple of days pretty much just cooling its jets, hanging out in a small area of the sea and waiting for the bad weather to pass. But the week wasn't wasted. In the last 3 days of active searching, the team managed to cover between 113 and 534 square kilometers per day. And in that time, it achieved a total search area of 2,900 square kilometers searched so far since the latest effort started last March. 2,900 square kilometers, that's about a fifth of the 15,000 square kilometers that they said over a year ago now that they were planning to search. Obviously, they haven't been making lightning progress, but they kind of set us up to expect that. They said that it might take at the time something up to like 18 months or something. Okay, but now the weather's improving. If we look at the weather forecast on windy.com, it looks like the weather for the week ahead is looking pretty good. Winds are between 10 and 20 knots, but out on the open sea, this is about as good as you're going to get on a reasonable basis. So according to Kevin Rupp's latest reports, the ship is back to the kind of movement pattern that we typically see when it's deploying those AUVs. Now, I wish I didn't have to do this, but I feel like it's necessary to address some misinformation that's been circulating on the internet. There have been claims that the ship had stopped because it was deploying ROVs to take a closer look at something on the seabed. I understand the desire to, wish for the best possible outcome, but as we've just stated, the reason for the ship holding tight was given quite clearly by Ocean Infinity itself, that it was waiting out bad weather. Also, we know that the ship does not have ROVs on board. That's another piece of misinformation that has been circulating. Don Thompson has taken great pains to point out that those boxes seen here on the deck of Armada 8605, they are not ROVs. They are refrigeration units. Why do they have refrigeration units? One of the things they can do is store food. Maybe the crew wants to stay out longer than they otherwise could, but we don't really know. Another thing I'd like to address is the claim that the seabed that they're searching is incredibly rugged and mountainous. And if they don't succeed in finding anything, it's just because the terrain is so complicated, it's virtually impossible to search. And that is just not correct. As you can see on this bathymetry map, there are some really rugged areas within the broader search area, notably Broken Ridge and the Diamantina Trench. Here's some video footage that the Australian authorities released a couple of years ago. These are computer-generated views of the rugged terrain. I don't know if these are horizontally compressed to exaggerate the steepness, but by all accounts, this is one of the more rugged parts of the seabed. And yet, important to note that Ocean Infinity has searched here before, back in 2018, and it did not report at the time that they found the task insurmountable. They seem to have just gone ahead and done it. Maybe it was challenging, but it was within their capabilities. So at any rate, the current area is not like that. It is considerably flatter. There are a few low ridges here and there, one of which Victor Iannello singled out in his 2023 paper as deserving a second look, thinking that, the wreckage could be maybe hiding in a shadow there, kind of tucked away at the base of a cliff or something. But the area was looked at in March, and it turned out that there was nothing there, nothing to be seen. After the end of the 2017 search, the one that was funded by the Australian government, the Australians released images of that scan that they had just done. Here you can see what it generally looks like, mostly pretty flat. There were some things that they found as they scanned this area that showed up on the sonar. When they detected that it looked interesting, they could go in and take a closer look. The robot sub had cameras that could take images, and in this case, it turned out to be a sunken ship. They also spotted something that looked like some kind of structure. It turned out to be a geological formation. It's interesting to compare what they saw there with the wreckage of missing Air France jet Air France 447 that was found on the seabed of the Atlantic after it disappeared in 2009. These are pictures that Kevin Rupp posted recently. The first one shows the image returned from the side scan sonar. As you can see, it's fairly low resolution, but all the same, it's clear that there's something there. So investigators went back to take a closer look, and this is what they saw in a higher resolution image. They could clearly make out distinct identifiable parts of the plane, especially large parts like the landing gear and the engine cores. Here's a part of the wing. This particular crash was fairly low speed as far as these things go. We don't really know how fast MH370 would have been going if it hit the water. We have some ideas, but it's not really conclusive. So the pieces might be smaller than Air France 447 were. But either way, there should be definitely identifiable debris to be seen. A question I've gotten a lot is whether the sediment on the seabed is so thick and goopy that maybe the debris just sank into it so it wouldn't be visible. The answer to that is no, it won't sink in. The reason we can say that confidently is that in the course of earlier scans along the seventh arc in this vicinity, search crews did find smallish objects that were quite plainly just sitting atop the ocean floor. For example, they saw a whale bone, they saw a steel drum, they saw some steel cables. So there's no reason to think that things of this nature are going to sink into the mud. Okay, so to recap, the search is well underway. After a brief hiatus, the AUVs appear to be going back in the water. I'll be keeping a close eye on developments as they unfold, and we'll be back with you in short order to keep you apprised of how it's all going. If you'd like to make sure you get those updates as soon as they're released, I would urge you to head over to the podcast show page at findingmh370.com, where you can sign up for a free newsletter that goes out with every episode. You can also leave comments and questions there, and you can sign up for a paid subscription that does so much to help make this podcast possible. For now, this is Jeff Wise signing off. I'll see you next time.